It's wheels up for holiday travel, but not for everybody. 737 Maxes are up in the sky now. Would you fly them yourself?
Absolutely not.
They didn't understand the danger that they were walking into.
Pull up. Pull up.
The plane had flown into the sea, at full speed.
The passengers would have, of course, been hysterical. Computers, laptops, phones would have been flying around.
Boeing resolved the criminal investigation against them in part by paying a $2.5 billion fine. They say the problems are fixed. But is that enough?
The whole point is, who killed my daughter and all of these other people on the plane, the two planes? Boeing just says, we're generally at fault, but no details.
Do you think they're trying to hide all the facts?
They're not trying, they are hiding all the facts.
People shouldn't innocently buy an airplane ticket and then be in a flying coffin.
On a sunny March morning in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, a truly remarkable group of passengers converged on Bola International Airport. 149 passengers from 35 different countries around the world got ready to board Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, heading off to Nairobi.
It was seemingly just packed with people who are on goodwill missions of various kinds. There was a big environmental conference happening in Nairobi, a UN environmental conference.
Amongst the 149 passengers were also 9 Ethiopians, and one of them was Tamru Mulu, who is a child protection advocate.
He was a kind of person who's really passionate about life, especially children who are suffering from conflict, drought.
Also on that Ethiopian Airlines flight were 8 Americans, including 24-year-old Samia Stumo, who was raised on a Massachusetts farm by a family with a very strong tradition of activism. Samia had just started work for ThinkWell, which is a global healthcare organization.
This was her first assignment. She was going to East Africa. She, at 24, had impressed them that they sent her instead of someone, a dozen years her senior.
But not everyone on that flight was on a goodwill mission. There were also 2 brothers from California, Melvin and Bennett Riffle, on one last adventure together because Melvin was about to become a new father. Tell me how big this was for these 2 brothers to do this together. That was pretty remarkable.
I thought so. I mean,
No, I think so too.
Yeah.
I think it's rare that 2 brothers their age would stay close enough to want to travel with each other like that.
Also on Ethiopian Air 302 that morning, a young Russian couple on vacation, Alexander Polyakov and his wife, Ekaterina.
Они очень любили путешествовать. У них мечта была сразу, но они перво-наперво, как они хотели именно поехать в этот национальный парк в Кению, чтобы увидеть крупных кошек.
And as they got ready to board, Ekaterina posted this cell phone video on Instagram of their plane outside that was waiting for them.
In general, very few people think much about the model of the plane that they're on. It's something that most people really don't think twice about.
In fact, it was a brand new model welcomed into the Ethiopian Airlines fleet with a lot of ceremony just months earlier, called the Boeing 737 MAX 8.
We are welcoming the state-of-the-art modern airplane, the 737 MAX 8.
It was a groundbreaking move for Ethiopian Airlines to acquire this aircraft. The fact that it was new, the fact that it uses the latest technology.
Boeing had a track record of success, and all expectations at the time were that the MAX would just be, the next big thing for the company.
But it turns out this brand new plane had a secret, unknown even to the pilots. And when it was revealed, it would not just impact Boeing in shocking and unforeseen ways, but the entire air traveling community worldwide.
Boeing is an iconic American company. They're known as the king of the sky. This is a company that's at the heart of American engineering and American manufacturing.
For Captain Sully, celebrated for successfully landing his crippled plane on New York's Hudson River, Boeing has long been the gold standard for passenger aircraft.
Boeing had a century-long history of engineering excellence, an effective culture, good leadership.
There's a saying, and it stands today: if it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. It's affirmation that Boeing has had our back for decades.
This is the 707. Boeing's prototype jet airliner, capable of speeds and altitudes which will revolutionize commercial air travel.
The 707 launches in 1958, and right off the bat, it is a huge success for Boeing. And it just so happens to be the same year that Frank Sinatra released it.
It was exotic, and it was desirable, and it was glamorous.
Air travel became, sort of the vogue.
People would dress up to travel. Meals and flights were not a joke, something that people might look forward to.
The 1960s were an extraordinary period for the company because of the 7 series of planes.
707 was the first successful jet. After that, Boeing just started building more and more, and the 727 came, the 737 came.
And then they would do the 747, the so-called Queen of the Skies, the first jumbo jet. Boeing, from that point forward, was the premier maker of passenger aircraft.
By the 1980s, Boeing is unmatched in terms of its power, its reach, and those 700s planes are it.
I mean, the company was so important to our country's economy, in part because it was the largest exporter in the world.
I mean, they manufacture Air Force One. I don't think you can get kind of any bigger than that.
But by the 1990s, Boeing started to face truly stiff competition from this European consortium called Airbus. But up until that point, Boeing hadn't really taken them all that seriously. But suddenly, they're up and coming.
They've really accelerated to become the only other, at this point, major global competitor to Boeing for commercial aircraft.
In late 2010, Airbus comes out with this new model that really shakes up the industry and puts serious pressure on Boeing to innovate.
The A320neo, a single-aisle aircraft that had new, more fuel-efficient engines that could fly farther and for cheaper.
People want to fly direct, and to do that, you need smaller, more efficient planes.
Boeing was focused on the wide-body world. Airbus beat them to the chase.
The A320neo. Damned if they didn't wind up becoming their fastest-selling airliner. And then Boeing's like, well, wait, what are we going to do?
Boeing comes up with what they think is this really smart plan. Instead of developing an entirely new plane to catch up with Airbus, they decide to take a shortcut and revamp a model that's already on the market, saving them a lot of extra time and money.
That's when they said, okay, we can take another look at the next iteration of 737.
There were new engines, larger, more fuel-efficient engines being added to this aircraft.
Boeing calls this new model the 737 MAX, and they promise they're going to fly more people, it'll cost less money, use less fuel, and cost a lot less to operate.
United Airlines says it has cut a new deal with Boeing to build 150 737s for its fleet over the next 10 years, giving the aircraft manufacturer a leg up against its main competitor, Airbus.
The Boeing 737 MAX was the fastest-selling airliner in Boeing history. Another ball out of the park for Boeing commercial aircraft.
You've got United and American and Southwest all lining up to buy it, along with 70 other buyers around the world.
One of the big customers early on was a young budget carrier in Indonesia called Lion Air. It was a huge deal.
Tonight's Money Matters, Boeing has finalized its biggest sale ever, a $22 billion order from Lion Air of Indonesia.
The 737 MAX 8 had been flying for 17 months without any incident, but then in October of 2018, suddenly, out of the blue, an alarming problem developed with one of Lion Air's brand new MAX planes.
They don't realize that there's something in it that could potentially be hazardous and something that pilots and co-pilots are not familiar with.
All of us are screaming like we are in a roller coaster. To be honest, I think this is my last flight and this is my last day.
Jakarta is the capital, the largest city in Indonesia, and it's a bustling metropolitan with around 10 million residents. The aviation industry was booming, especially with the increase of the middle class in Indonesia.
One of the airlines that benefited from that boom in air travel is Lion Air, an aggressive, rapidly growing budget Indonesian air carrier. In 2011, Lion Air made a huge splash buying more than 200 of Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes.
Even the signing was overseen by then U.S. President Barack Obama.
So I want to congratulate Lion Air for their incredible success.
One of the Lion Air pilots chosen to fly the new 737 MAX was 31-year-old Bhavya Saneja. He's an Indian national whose dreams of being a pilot started when he was just a child. So can you tell me about your son?
Yes, Bob, my son was a gifted child, a blessed child. I was into aviation, and for an aviator, when the child is flying and he becomes a commander, it is a big thing, you know, it is the sort of pinnacle of your dreams.
Even though her son had over 6,000 hours of flight experience, Sangeeta says she was really concerned after learning that he wouldn't be going through pilot simulator training for the MAX.
I said, you haven't had a simulator training, how can you go for MAX? And it is a more powerful engine. So without a simulator, how will you manage?
One of the core selling points for Boeing of the 737 MAX was you don't need pilot training in a simulator.
They were selling this to airlines as essentially just another 737 that the airline pilots could fly without learning all that much new.
It's a huge deal to not have to have simulator training for pilots for any airline. It costs money and time. It takes the pilot off of the line and flying passengers around.
Lion Air had asked Boeing about simulator training for their pilots, and Boeing dissuaded them from this.
Now, according to internal Boeing documents, one of their employees ridiculed the request in a message to a colleague saying, now, Lion Air might need a sim to fly the MAX, and maybe because of their own stupidity, I'm scrambling, trying to figure out how to unscrew this now. Idiots.
Well, they were mocking them because if Lion Air required simulator training, then other airlines would say, well, wait a minute. If they're requiring it, maybe we need it. Then the whole house of cards would start to fall apart.
He said, Mom, I've been given ground training. They have given me a training on iPad. I said, what, an iPad?
So you would sit down with an iPad course, and I think there were 3 or 4 parts, and it went through a robotic voice describing what the MAX is about.
The 737 MAX has a 69-inch fan.
Did you see anything in it that looks, wow, that's substantial, we should probably do more training?
It seemed to be enough.
He trusted Boeing blindly, and that trust, you know, gave him immense confidence. He was empowered.
In October of 2018, Lion Air had a handful of the new 737 MAXes in its fleet, and one of the aircraft was going to be departing from Bali with the crew and passengers.
Me and my colleague in office, we went to Bali about October 2018. Bali is amazing for holiday, especially in Asia.
Lion Air Flight JT043 was scheduled to take off from Bali to Jakarta.
The flight was quite full of passengers, and most of them are local or domestic tourists like me. It's around 7 or 10 minutes after the takeoff, the flight suddenly feels like a fall down.
It was a dive, a steep drop, 200 feet, and it wasn't something that was just caused by turbulence.
All of us are screaming like we are in a roller coaster.
How many times did it go up and down?
Up and down 4 times.
4 times?
Yes, the flight attendant who was sitting in the back, they could feel it up and down in extreme way.
When an aircraft is pitching aggressively downward like this aircraft was, and it may feel as if your stomach is coming up into your throat, basically, but then comes the positive G's. It'll squash you down into your seat.
To be honest, I think it's almost like this is my last flight and this is my last day.
It just so happened there was a third pilot traveling on the plane, and he steps in and helps them get control of the situation.
Until it's landed to the airport, I can hear everyone like say, so relief. Some of the passengers are Muslim. I can hear that say, Alhamdulillah, thanks God. I cannot say it in a word. It's really relief. Yeah, I still feel a little bit shaky until now about that.
The pilots were able to control it. They knew they had a problem, but they didn't understand exactly what the nature of the problem was.
After the flight successfully landed in Jakarta, the pilots logged that they had had some issues, but they left a lot of gaps in understanding what had happened on that flight.
That left the next crew in the dark about potential problems with the aircraft.
The very next day, Captain Suneja is assigned to an early morning flight out of Jakarta on that same 737 MAX, but he was given an incomplete report about what happened to that plane the previous night.
These are 2 different flights, but the same exact plane. So it's something that spells disaster.
On the early morning of October 29, 2018, at the airport in Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, Lion Air Flight 610 was getting ready to take off. Its destination was the city of Pangkal Pinang, which is located on the Indonesian island of Bangka.
There was 189 people on board, 181 passengers, 2 pilots, and 6 crew members.
One of the passengers was Miss Fiona Ayuzen. She was a businesswoman, 29 years old. She was flying back to Bangka for work.
Bawain kopi ya, Pak? Gitu. Karena saya suka kopi Bangka.
Pas pulang ke rumah, Mama bilang sekolah yang bener, terus dikasih uang jajan. Terus kalau besok paginya udah nggak ngeliat, soalnya udah berangkat duluan mamanya.
There was also another passenger by the name of Fendi Cristanto. He was flying to Bangka on a business trip and also on a personal trip. His father just passed away.
Karena dia mau mengikuti sembahyang bersama dengan keluarganya untuk sembahyang orang tuanya. Pulang mau ngikutin sembahyang yang ke-21 hari.
One of the passengers shot some video as they were boarding the flight. No one on board, including the pilots, had any idea that this very same plane suffered a near catastrophe in the air just the previous day. And on that video, you can see the brand new 737 MAX out the window.
Lion Air Flight 610 on that same 737 MAX is taking off from Jakarta. Very shortly after the flight takes off, the pilots are struggling with the plane.
The stick shaker pops off. It is loud and it is rattling in the captain's hands. There are a cacophony, a tidal wave of other distracting alerts. Airspeed disagree, altitude disagreed.
Pull up, pull up. Just 10 minutes later, around 6:30 in the morning, a tugboat captain was out on the Java Sea, just east of Jakarta.
Saya merasakan ada sesuatu benda yang jatuh. Nah, di situ dalam hitungan detik terdengar dentuman cukup keras.
Apa itu?
Jadi saya menghubungi Jakarta Radio.
Iya, desa apa?
Itu telah terjadi pesawat jatuh.
The crash site, it is about 25 miles from Jakarta seaport. On my way to the crash site, really, I pray to God. I had great expectation that everybody still alive. Arriving on scene, when I saw the debris, the small pieces of fuselage, I lost my hope.
Kalau di dalam, kebanyakan itu hampir sama dengan yang ada di permukaan. Karena yang ada di dasar laut, di kedalaman itu adalah potongan-potongan tubuh ataupun bagian-bagian pesawat, entah itu serpihan, kursi.
Presiden Direktur Lion Air Edward.
When news of the crash broke, I immediately flew in from Beijing, where I was based at the time. So the sun has just gone down, and you can see all the police officers along this dock. After arriving in Jakarta, our team headed out straight to the docks where the wreckage from the plane was being brought in. Whether it crashed or what happened, we still don't even know. But these crews have been pulling up and carrying out debris piece by piece. By the next day, the family members of the passengers were gathering and anxiously really waiting for word on whether their loved ones had survived the crash. Among the family members that I got the chance to talk to was the wife of that passenger who took that video of himself boarding onto the Lion airplane just minutes before it crashed. Your husband actually was taking video of the others getting on the plane when he got on?
Yeah.
Yes. Can you show that to us? These are a lot of the other passengers that were on the plane?
Yeah.
Is there still some hope that there are survivors?
Yeah, we do believe that God still control, and we still have some hope that they can find him alive.
It was clear pretty quickly that the plane had flown into the sea, at full speed, and came apart with such force that there was no way anyone could have survived.
Berdoa buat cepet ketemu gitu. Berdoa biar tetap selamat, tapi nggak selamat gitu.
Karena benar-benar saya kerasa kehilangan.
Hubungan antara Fiona dengan ibunya ini sangat dekat. Nah, begitu mendengar kecelakaan itu benar-benar down sekali. Benar-benar shock, down. Jadi 1 hari setelah pesawat jatuh, mendengar kabar ibu yang meninggal.
Fendi left behind a wife and 4 children, the youngest who was 5 years old.
Jujur ya Bu, suami saya itu kalau naik pesawat itu memang sangat khawatir. Dia itu paling takut kalau naik. Dengan rasa ketakutan yang dia alami gitu loh.
At the time, very little was understood about what might have happened. Brand new plane, nice enough day, nothing in particular that would point to an immediate cause of this accident.
This is a fairly new plane. The 737 MAX, it had only 800 flight hours.
But it turns out there was a hidden danger on that plane. A flight control system that Boeing did not even tell the pilots about.
There was nothing in the manuals that alerted the pilots to the existence of this new system that was placed on the MAX.
Pull up.
It has one mission, and that's to drive the nose down.
Terrain, terrain.
And it will not stop.
Pull up.
Was given the power to try to kill them, essentially, until it finally succeeded.
Pull up, pull up.
Devastating plane crash in Indonesia.
Lion Air jet with 189 people on board fell into the sea minutes after takeoff, leaving no survivors.
So far, 24 body bags have been delivered. The jet was a new Boeing 737.
I gotta say, my first thoughts were, boy, it's a brand new airplane. It must have been bad maintenance, or it must have been pilot error.
A lot of Indonesians initially just saw that this was Lion Air fault.
ABC's David Curley has the story. Good morning, David.
George, the real thing that we need to find are those two black boxes, which will yield a lot of answers to all these questions.
The National Transport Safety Committee found the flight data recorder on the 1st of November. It was just only 3 days after the crash.
As they look at the contents of the flight data recorder, it becomes clear that something had gone terribly wrong. The pilots are struggling with the plane, almost in a tug of war.
When we found the black box, we found that the aircraft was pitching up and then down, down and up and down and up. It's up and down for about 24 times.
Had you ever seen anything quite like this?
I never knew any case of the aircraft can fly up and down like this. I knew that the pilot was fighting with the aircraft.
It would have been a terrifying roller coaster ride. During that time period, the passengers would have, of course, been hysterical. Things would have been flying in the cabin. Computers, laptops, phones would have been flying around. People would have been screaming.
It was a clear weather, so they could see the sea. And I think it will be very scary for everyone in the cabin to see outside, to feel the speed.
Sepuluh menit atau berapa itu? Rasa ketakutannya sangat amat.
Saya yakin saat itu dia sangat takut sekali, Bu, dengan pesawat yang goyang seperti itu. Saya bisa ngerasain juga.
When the cockpit recorder was eventually recovered, it was revealed that pilots were rifling through the pilot manual, trying to apparently figure out what to do.
They're turning the pages to find out what the hell it is, why the aircraft is going down.
They start shouting about which procedure should do. They knew that they were having serious problems, and they just screaming the name of God.
That point of time, that only pain he must have felt was the sense of failure, that he's not able to save others, except that he was a brave child, you know.
We surprised. It's very strange that the aircraft doing that way. Then we asked Boeing what kind of system that may create this way.
What Boeing revealed to investigators came as a complete surprise. It turns out that Boeing had installed a flight control system on the 737 MAX that had the power to take control of the plane from the pilots without them even knowing about it. The program was called MCAS.
MCAS, Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, and that this system, under certain circumstances, can trigger in such a way that it will cause the airplane to nose down.
Why did Boeing put this MCAS system? What was it for? It's a mystery not only for us, but also for the pilot and co-pilot on board the plane.
So the reason they put MCAS on the airplane was because they put these brand new huge engines on an old airframe.
In order to have sufficient ground clearance, they moved the engine further up above the leading edge of the wing and further forward. And that changed the way the airplane flew.
And this effect of the engines came in and the airplane starts to want to pitch up all by itself. The idea was to provide something that would offset that pitching moment or causing the nose to come up.
When the plane computers think the plane is in danger of a stall, so in very basic terms, MCAS pushes the plane's nose down by automatically triggering the rear horizontal stabilizer.
So the MCAS is there to correct what MCAS thinks is wrong.
Right.
The pilots have no idea why this plane is going down against their will,
Yes.
so they tried to fight it back.
Yes. One of the most fundamental muscle memory things about knows how to do. If the nose goes down too far, you pull it back and you trim. And this battle goes back and forth a couple of dozen times.
So it was MCAS, it was the computer against the pilot.
Yes, and the way MCAS was designed, it was given the control authority to do it as many times as necessary. In other words, it was given the power to try to kill them, essentially, until it finally succeeded.
Boeing's revelations about the MCAS system and what caused it to activate on the Lion Air flight in the first place would cause an uproar in the pilot community.
And it would all lead to a secretly taped meeting where Boeing was recorded telling pilots that MCAS was being fixed.
Those are going to be relatively straightforward software changes that we expect will be done in a fairly short period of time. We want to make sure we're fixing the right things.
But while that was happening, the plane would continue to fly.
They were rolling the dice with the lives of the global traveling public.
Now that urgent safety warning from Boeing about their brand new 737 jets after that deadly crash in Indonesia. Now concerns about a feature that could malfunction, causing planes to abruptly dive.
A week after the Lion Air crash, Boeing issued a safety bulletin to the airlines, finally revealing the existence of a flight control system on the 737 MAX that could unexpectedly force the plane's nose down.
It's an admission by the company that there is a potential glitch in its newest aircraft.
Just a few days later, Boeing tells operators for the first time that there's a new and previously undisclosed system on the aircraft, and that is MCAS.
That was a shock. It's not in our manuals at all, except in one section, our abbreviation section. We didn't know what MCAS meant. It meant nothing to us.
But there was another critical question to be answered. What caused MCAS to force the nose of the Lion airplane down in the first place? The plane was flying normally, so why did MCAS activate?
Among a lot of surprises was that MCAS was triggered by a faulty angle of attack indicator, which is a relatively innocuous piece of equipment on the side of the airplane.
The angle of attack sensor was feeding incorrect data about the angle of the plane's nose.
It was telling the plane that it was, approaching a stall situation, that its nose was pitched up.
So the plane thought that the nose was angled too high, when in fact it wasn't.
And that MCAS needed to come in and push the nose back down.
And there was a further revelation about MCAS that took investigators by complete surprise. Even though there are two angle of attack sensors on the 737 MAX, MCAS only relied on one of them.
It's a lack of redundancy that appears to my mind to be unacceptable in airplane design, because the AOA indicator is susceptible to damage. It's not a robust piece of equipment.
A single point of failure hooked to a safety critical system, you just don't do that. It's crazy.
The bottom line here is the 737 MAX is safe, and the safety is a core value for us at Boeing.
Boeing CEO Dennis Muhlenberg went on Fox Business to reassure the public that a bulletin had been sent to all the airlines instructing pilots exactly what to do if there was another emergency situation involving the 737 MAX.
We've already issued a couple of additional bulletins that point them back to existing flight procedures to handle that kind of condition.
So Boeing is telling the pilots that one of their options is to simply turn off the power supply to the electric motor on the stabilizer. That's the, the piece that pivots up and down and controls the nose of the aircraft.
Boeing pointed out that the pilots on that previous Lion Air flight who overcame a mid-air emergency involving MCAS had followed the appropriate procedure by turning off power to the stabilizer. That was a step the pilots on the fatal flight did not take.
That was perceived to be an indirect way of blaming the airline and blaming the pilots without also acknowledging design shortcomings of the system.
It emotionally tore me apart, as if I was blamed for him being the pilot. I was blamed for killing all the people, mothering a son who could not take care of his passengers.
Pilots were furious. Pilot unions asked Boeing, why didn't you tell us if you put something on the airplane that's going to actually interfere with my job?
Late November, about a month after the accident, 4 Boeing executives traveled to the headquarters of the Allied Pilots Association, the union that represents pilots at American Airlines.
That meeting was secretly recorded by the head of the pilots union.
Our president at the time wanted to make sure we knew exactly what was said.
We flat out deserve to know what is on our airplanes.
I don't disagree.
I don't know that understanding this system would have changed the outcome of this. We try not to overload the crews with information that's unnecessary so they actually know the information that we believe is important.
It enraged us. Boeing always gives you the information. They don't parcel it out.
We're working with the FAA right now to try to figure out what software changes we might make to eliminate the failure conditions that we experienced at Lion Air.
They said, well, we're going to correct the software, all the things that you brought up.
Those are going to be relatively straightforward software changes that we expect we can get out in a fairly short period of time. Weeks, not a year, but a couple, maybe 6 weeks-ish.
But the question I have for you is, do you feel comfortable that the situation is under control today before any software fixes are implemented?
Absolutely.
They were taking a gamble with keeping that in the air. They had such a big bet on the 737 MAX. They had staked their reputation, they had staked their financial future on it.
4 months after that Lion Air crash, the 737 MAX is still flying all over the world. Meanwhile, 149 people are saying their goodbyes as they prepare to board that Ethiopian Airlines flight to Kenya. Among them, young Samia Stumo, who had just flown in from D.C. and was transiting to Nairobi for her assignment with her global health care organization.
I guess she had landed in Ethiopia, and I said, safe travels with a bunch of exclamation points, and she said, thanks, boo.
We didn't know that there was an issue with the plane. We thought that the problem that happened in Indonesia was because of a problem with that airlines or the pilots or maintenance or something.
Because the Lion Air crash happened in the other side of the world, maybe they didn't understand the danger that they were walking into.
Samia, where are you? Where are you, Samia?
Boeing killed my daughter. We're not afraid of anybody.
The bottom line here is the 737 MAX is safe.
It may be now, many people think, but can that ever make up for the lives that were lost in 2 crashes, even with Boeing now accepting responsibility? Do the people that should be accountable for what happened, are they being punished?
No, absolutely not.
Pull up.
We flat out deserve to know what is on our airplanes.
The nose is pointing down, and it's over.
Boeing 737 MAX 8 crashing to Earth just 6 minutes after takeoff.
There was not a plane there. There was a hole in the ground.
The pilots have no idea why this plane is going down against their will.
Pilots were furious. Why didn't you tell us if you put something on the airplane that's going to actually interfere with my job?
What I want and what the whole public wants is accountability.
The Berkshires are in western Massachusetts, at the very far western end of the state, right up against the New York state line. The Stumos live in a town called Sheffield, and it's an absolutely lovely spot. It's quite a large farm, and it has this unbelievable view of the mountain range just to the west.
You can see the lower field is a cornfield.
How much land is there here?
180 acres.
Nadia Milleron and her husband Michael Stumo moved to this farm after a career as attorneys and advocates in Winston, Connecticut. That's also the home of the brother of Nadia's mom, perhaps the most famous consumer rights activist in American history.
Standard can be considered so inadequate that it is deemed illegal for the consumer interest.
Nadia's uncle was Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader became famous through his activism in Washington and this whole war on auto safety and all the rest.
I think he's had a big influence in both of our lives in terms of trying to make better things happen.
Nadia and Michael had 3 sons and 1 daughter who they named Samya.
She was a force of nature. She was just, oh gosh, she was, beautiful, intelligent, charismatic. She could just light up a room. But around here, she raised pigs. She would sell the meat to the neighbors. If she decided you needed to buy her pork, you were going to buy her pork.
Samya very much absorbed the family ethic, that you were supposed to use your time well, you develop your skills. She became very good at her instrument, which for her was cello. Watching Samya, you got the sense of someone who had really kind of brought together all these strains in the family, starting with Uncle Ralph in his activism, and then through her own parents.
Definitely he influenced Samya tremendously because she was out there at 9 years old campaigning for his presidential campaigning. They made her cry. Your mother shouldn't allow you to be out here, and Ralph Nader is spoiling the election, and she understood the issues and she talked right back at them.
She had leadership written all over her. She had compassion in an intellectually rigorous way. Everybody loved her.
One pivotal moment in young Samya's life that fueled her drive to change the world was the tragic childhood death of her brother Nels.
He was diagnosed with cancer at 15, 16 months of age, and he ended up not making it. He died a little over 2 years old. We actually, we only have one picture with all 4 kids.
Did she ever tell you that part of her motivation and dream to get into medicine was because of what happened to Nels?
Yeah, she did. She believed that, her calling was healthcare, and I think that was partially a result of her exposure to her brother's illness.
Samya went to the University of Massachusetts and then managed to get a full-ride scholarship for the public health master's program at the University of Copenhagen.
Everybody liked her, but she was very firm in her beliefs. It really kind of forced you to think about what you said, think about what you believe, and defend it.
When I met Samya, I was really shy to talk to people. We just would go on these fun adventures. It just helped me be more fearless.
She had this knack of making you feel as fascinating as she was.
In January 2019, Samya had landed a dream job in Washington, D.C. with a global public health organization called ThinkWell.
Just a few months into her new job at ThinkWell, Samia gets her first assignment to go overseas. They were going to send her over to East Africa in March of 2019, where she was going to help set up some new offices.
This is the kind of thing that a relatively seasoned person is usually put into, and someone like Samia, without much experience in this, we were just so blown away by her that we felt that she had the acumen to be able to figure this out.
As Samia got ready for her Africa trip, perhaps the last thing on her mind was the tragic crash in Indonesia just a few months earlier of a Boeing 737 MAX plane, killing everyone on board.
And now we're going to turn to that chilling report about the Lion aircraft. From the moment the flight took off, pilots fought a tug-of-war with an automated system that repeatedly pushed the jet's nose down.
After the crash, concerns had been raised about a new flight control system Boeing had installed on the plane called MCAS.
Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. This system, under certain circumstances, can trigger in such a way that it will cause the airplane to nose down, independent of the pilot's judgment.
It turns out there was a defective sensor on that Lion airplane that accidentally triggered MCAS to activate and caused the plane to repeatedly go into a dive before it finally crashed.
After Lion Air, there was not a lot of urgency. I think it was sort of easy to dismiss it as a one-off. I would say it pretty quickly faded from view for the majority of the traveling public.
On March 10th, 2019, Samia left D.C. for Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where she would be transferring to another plane on her way to her assignment in Kenya.
So there's 149 travelers from around the world, and they're about to get on the newest Boeing airliner, the 737 MAX. They have no idea of the danger.
On March 10th, 2019, Samia Stumo had just arrived in the Ethiopian Addis Ababa after a long flight from Washington, D.C.
When I woke up, I just looked at the message and it said 2 more hours to Nairobi.
There were 149 passengers on that flight from 35 countries, most of them heading to Nairobi for a UN conference.
Also, at Gate 12 in Terminal 2, those two brothers from California, Melvin and Bennett Riffle, who were enjoying a globe-trotting jaunt together before the birth of Melvin's daughter.
When we said goodbye, he gave me a kiss and gave me a kiss on the stomach for Emma, you know, and he was all excited but nervous.
There were also this young Russian couple who posted a video on Instagram showing the 737 MAX, a brand new aircraft.
Unlike the pilots involved in that Indonesian crash, the Ethiopian Airlines pilots knew about Boeing's MCAS flight control system, and Boeing had actually sent a directive to airlines instructing pilots what to do if a plane went into a sudden dive on its own.
So Boeing is telling the pilots to turn off the power supply to the electric motor on the stabilizer. That's the, you know, the piece that pivots up and down and controls the nose of the aircraft.
It was a bright Sunday morning. The plane took off at 8:30. And 3 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft started behaving erratically.
Their instruments start to show different readings.
After 6 minutes later, the plane was spotted again about 30 miles from Addis in a small town called Bishoftu.
ተሽከረከሩ ዱበኒ ይምቦባ አራ ዱፌ ዱራኒ ማታስ ኦልቀበ
yeroo lafa udoo ga'uun sagalee guddaadhaa fi haara guddaatu samiitti ol ka'e.
Immediately drive to the Ethiopian Airlines compound. There were family members, people were crying, and some of them holding their head, and it was so horrifying to see them.
An hour earlier or something, I talked to him, and it just didn't feel right.
I don't know, I was trying to deny that it happened, or it's true, or somehow he has been spared.
We start in Ethiopia, where around 157 people are feared dead after a plane crashed early on Sunday.
Within, I think it was 2.5 hours or 3 hours, we were on a plane headed to Addis Ababa. This dirt road takes you to the field where that crash site is. So finally, after almost 3.5 hours, that we arrive at the crash site, and it's splayed out in the fields. Right next to the debris field, you have the smell of jet fuel intermingled with the smell of death. And you can see those workers picking through everything, trying to ensure that they don't miss any key parts of the plane. The plane came down at such an enormous rate of speed, basically as fast as a cruise missile flies, that it essentially disintegrated into that hole. You can tell how violent that impact was, how shredded these metal components are. But you also have to remember that there is more difficult work here for a lot of these workers here, and that is dealing with the people who are on these planes. And everywhere you go, you see shredded bags and personal effects.
Breaking news, an Ethiopian Airlines flight has crashed.
With victims from 35 different countries on board, grief resonates all around the world, including in a small seaside town in Russia.
Ну, просто очень обидно, когда такие дети на взлете, так сказать, и на взлете своей карьеры, на взлете всего погибают.
In the Northern California town of Redding, a phone rings in the Riffle home.
It was the embassy in Ethiopia. I said, I know why you're calling. Is it both boys? And they said it was.
It's something you can't believe when you hear it. It's just like you're in a nightmare or something, and it's just totally unbelievable.
It's one thing to lose one of your children, and you lost both.
Yeah. Lost our family, and we had to help Brittany.
I said, please don't tell me my husband's dead. And Susan said, both of them. And I just collapsed. What do I do now? I'm pregnant. What do I do? Our baby. What do I do now?
And word of the terrible crash also travels to a family farm nestled in the Berkshires in Massachusetts.
I turned on the BBC. It said that a plane had crashed. I remember I couldn't breathe. Then I woke up, Michael, and he told me, what are you talking about? That's impossible. That's what he told me.
Can't be true.
My sister is not going to die in a crash. It doesn't fit into your world.
And we thought, oh, well, maybe she survived. We needed to get to Ethiopia right away to help her. We had to be there. And we had to protect her.
We got in a car and we headed for JFK. Got on the flight, and along the way, along our journey, we learned that there were no survivors because we kept looking at the news.
Like Nadia and Michael, many grief-stricken families made their way to the crash site, desperate to find any trace of their loved ones.
You know, there was not a plane there. There was a hole in the ground.
Anybody able to find the body remains?
There was nothing bigger than a femur bone.
The black box data now in the hands of Ethiopian officials.
As the investigation continued in the cause of the crash, there was a question on many people's minds. Would Boeing 737 MAX plane be implicated in a fatal tragedy again?
The
Boeing 737 MAX 8, crashing to Earth just 6 minutes after takeoff in Ethiopia.
First Indonesia, now Ethiopia.
The big question here is, has the same thing happened?
The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder were recovered the next day, and it didn't take long for investigators to conclude that there were similarities.
The faulty angle of attack sensor triggered the activation of MCAS right after takeoff, and that is almost exactly what happened on the Lion Air aircraft.
What was heard on the cockpit voice recorder, the first officer saying, pitch up, pitch up, pitch up, while the MCAS was kicking and nosediving the aircraft. It was so difficult for them to keep the aircraft under control.
Despite similarities between the two crashes, this time there was a huge difference. Not only the Ethiopian Airlines pilots knew about MCAS, they also followed Boeing's instruction on how to disable it.
The crew performed all the procedures repeatedly provided by the manufacturer, but was not able to control the aircraft.
This was actually pretty shocking because Boeing had been suggesting that overcoming an erroneous MCAS activation was pretty straightforward. If that was the case, why did this second accident happen?
To better understand why those pilots could not recover control of the plane, we asked two experienced American Airlines pilots and members of the Allied Pilots Association to take us through what might have occurred in that Ethiopian Airlines cockpit based on information from the black boxes. So in here, what will we see?
In this airplane, while it is not a MAX, the displays are very similar, but what's unique about the MAX in this case is the MCAS.
I'll be kind of simulating the MCAS with my electric trim switch to show what the MCAS would be doing.
So now we're going to take off from the capital of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, heading to Kenya.
Yep.
Shortly after the takeoff, faulty data from the plane's angle of attack sensor triggers a myriad of false alerts in that cockpit.
Seconds after you take off.
Altitude disagree, airspeed disagree.
The stick shaker is shaking continuously, very loud. This will not stop throughout the entire flight.
In the middle of all these distractions, MCAS suddenly activates.
MCAS is firing. Starts to push the nose down. I'm pulling back, and then I trim up, get a little bit of trim up on it, and the MCAS kicks in again. The MCAS is more powerful and fast than what the pilot can do, so it'll always win more.
It was at this point that the Ethiopian Airlines pilots followed Boeing's instructions and cut off electronic power to the stabilizer in the plane's tail. So you realize that MCAS is not working.
But the problem now is that the nose is so far down, they're having trouble
holding it back, yeah.
MCAS had left the plane in such a precarious position that the pilots did not have the physical strength to manually pull it out of that deep dive.
Now the stick is getting very, very heavy. So the captain says, pull with me, which is basically saying, help me. I've got a lot of weight on this, but I have no trim to do it. I go, okay, manual trim.
Okay, and I'm trying, but it's not working.
I can't hold it back.
Unable to control the plane manually, in a last-ditch effort, the Ethiopian pilots decided to turn the electronic stabilizer system back on.
The MCAS fires. And this fire goes and goes. I'm pulling back, a little bit of trip. And now the nose is pointing down and it's over. Stop the sim. They're headed toward the ground. They turn those switches back on, which is not in a checklist, but welcome to the battlefield. You're staring at the ground and you don't know what else to do.
Do you ever think about what goes through the mind and the heart of pilots when the plane is going down?
Yes, I don't like to think about that. I think that's everyone's worst nightmare.
It's hard. But they fought. They fought. They did what pilots do.
The system let them down. The system let them down.
Unlike with Lion Air, the Ethiopian Air crash has sudden and swift repercussions for Boeing. Ethiopian Air immediately grounds their entire MAX fleet, and like a domino effect, countries around the world start grounding their fleets.
All of us at Boeing are deeply sorry for the loss of life in the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 and Lion Air Flight 610 accidents.
Boeing was saying that they were working on adding safeguards to MCAS to make a safe airplane even safer.
Would the accident have happened without MCAS, though? You
Again,
call it a link.
It's a chain of events, right? There is no singular item, it's a chain of events.
But what you came up with in the end was flawed, was it not?
We've designed the MAX to have the flying qualities that were desired in the hands of the pilots. The MCAS system is part of that design effort.
Corporations always see profit, always see brand protection. They will not easily admit their wrongdoing, even where it is very evident. And that was the case with Boeing at that particular time.
346 people died. Can you answer a few questions here about that?
He's sorry that we lost our family members. He doesn't take any accountability for having caused their deaths.
If Boeing thought that Nadia and Michael and the other victims' families were going to just quietly go away and not try to hold the company accountable, they could not have been more wrong.
It was amazing to behold these two people from this farm in western Massachusetts coming down to take on really one of the biggest corporations in the world.
Mr. Stumo, thank you for your presence today.
Boeing killed my daughter. We're not afraid of anybody.
In the fall of 2019, Nadia went back to Ethiopia. After months of digging and searching, workers had actually been able to find some remains from the crash. And Nadia brought back those remains, and they actually included some artifacts.
We got back Samia's business journal, which talks about her plans. We got back her passport. This is a business blouse that she took with her, and it all smells of jet fuel. They fill the room with the smell. I mean, to me, it's the smell of death.
I don't want other mothers and other families to go through this. I don't want them to be trying to hear their daughter's voice and, wonder what you would say to them. So that's why it's important to work on aviation safety. Because people shouldn't innocently buy an airplane ticket and then be in a flying coffin.
While Nadia and her husband Michael were consumed by grief, they were able to quickly turn their anguish into action against Boeing.
The family of Samia Stumo shares their pain so that others don't feel the same.
Michael and Nadia fly to Chicago and file the first lawsuit against Boeing by an American family.
I want her death not to be in vain. I don't want anybody else to die.
Nadia and Michael, along with more than 100 other families of victims around the world, alleged that MAX had a defective design and that Boeing issued inadequate warnings about the plane, something that Boeing denied at the time.
This is going to go down as one of the most callous, deliberate efforts to keep a product in the public domain for the wrong reasons.
What really shocks me is their greed. I don't know how they can still, sleep at night.
But there was a second front in Nadia and Michael's battle against Boeing. They and the other families were determined to take part in the congressional hearings into what went wrong with the 737 MAX and make sure that another crash never happened again.
We have 3 generations of farm advocacy in my family, and Nadia, of course, has, Ralph Nader and her family and that advocacy.
People should not fly this plane if it's ungrounded.
My uncle said to us practical things.
To never settle for staff, always go for the top.
Like it's cruel irony. Samya's family knew how to do it because it's a very complicated system to navigate, and it's a fight.
Nadia has really been, I think, a principal support for many of the other families out there, while Michael is pursuing the more, what's the fix and what went wrong.
As we go forward, this committee will leave no stone unturned.
We kept saying you can't just have the bureaucrats and the engineers and the pilots. It's all about the families.
Today, I speak not only with my voice, but the voices of my departed family.
Paul Girogi testified.
And he had lost his entire family.
I think about the last 6 minutes a lot. My wife and my mom-in-law knew they were going to die. They had to somehow comfort the children during those final moments, knowing they were all their last. I wish I was there with them.
At the congressional hearings, there was some talk that foreign pilots failed to respond appropriately.
For me, the accident report reaffirms my belief that pilots trained in the United States would have successfully been able to handle this situation.
Chair now recognizes Captain Chelsea B. Sullenberger III.
That claim was called out after the dramatic appearance of perhaps the most famous pilot in America, Chesley Sullenberger.
I'm one of a relatively small group of people who have experienced such a crisis and lived to share what we learned about it.
Sully was the miracle on the Hudson pilot. He successfully landed his plane on New York's Hudson River after a bird strike crippled his engines. Captain Sullenberger became a national hero, immortalized by Tom Hanks in the movie Sully.
Like many pilots, I was disappointed that many were blaming the dead crews of the accident flights. I've got to tell you from personal, first-hand experience how real and how intense the startle factor is.
I recently experienced all these warnings in a 737 MAX flight simulator during recreations of the accident flights. Even knowing what was going to happen, I could see how crews could have run out of time before they could have solved the problems.
Boeing, built into their design of MCAS sort of an assumption that pilots would be able to react to something going wrong within 4 seconds.
Well, think about that. Let's start the clock. Now, 2, 3. That's it. It's just really unlikely. Almost any airline crew would have acted effectively that fast. These accidents should never have happened. And I'm really distressed that they happened.
But the investigation into Boeing would go much deeper, raising questions about whether Boeing knew about problems with the MAX before they put it in the air.
The information coming out of the investigation is shocking.
And it would all lead to a face-to-face confrontation between a grieving mother from a farm and the head of one of the most powerful companies in the world.
And I want to, confront the situation, but I want to say it to you directly because I don't think you understand what we're saying.
The things that are coming out of the investigation are shocking. Shocking about what Boeing knew and what it was saying internally.
The House investigation concluded that the safety of the flying public was put into jeopardy by Boeing's pressure to compete with Airbus.
The committee uncovered emails and communications showing that there had been lower-level employees who raised questions several times about MCAS.
In an internal email, a Boeing engineer wrote about that problem that triggered MCAS in both plane crashes, saying, "Are we vulnerable to single sensor failures with the MCAS implementation?" This is back in 2015, asking about the vulnerability of these particular devices.
Yeah, they're setting my daughter up to die in 2019. These are questions of life and death, but that's not how they treated them in the company.
House investigators released documents they had obtained from inside Boeing showing that their own training pilots had a very dismissive attitude towards regulators and customers.
One Boeing employee who emerged as a central figure in the investigation was Chief Technical Pilot Mark Fortner, who became well known in the media after his emails became public.
Mark Fortner was the one who asked regulators whether they could remove any mention of MCAS from the flight crew operations manual. Fortner, in some of the emails and instant messages, was kind of gloating at his ability to, as he said, Jedi mind trick regulators.
In fact, it was Fortner who wrote that instant message to a colleague, mocking Lion Air for their stupidity in requesting simulator training, referring to them as idiots.
His emails were shocking, but they're just the tip of the iceberg of the failure of the safety culture at Boeing.
Some Boeing employees openly questioned the safety culture of the company during development of the 737 MAX. In one email, a worker said, "This airplane is designed by clowns, who in turn are supervised by monkeys." Another Boeing employee wrote, "Frankly, right now all my internal warning bells are going off, and for the first time in my life, I'm sorry to say that I'm hesitant about putting my family on a Boeing airplane."
The safety cult eviscerated under production pressure.
For the first time, and on tonight's one-year anniversary of the first 737 MAX crash, Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg faced Congress.
For Nadia, Michael, and the other families, the person they really wanted answers from was the man in charge of Boeing.
When Dennis Muilenburg comes to Washington to testify, it's a really big moment.
I've met with the families. They keep faces of their loved ones in people's mind. They're not going to be forgotten.
I, too, would like to acknowledge the families that are here with us today. And again, wanted to tell you I'm sorry. We are deeply, deeply sorry. And we'll never forget.
He was just saying words for the camera. They never tried to reach the families personally.
Who bears the principal responsibility at Boeing for the cascading events that resulted in the crash of Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302?
Mr. Chairman, my company and I are responsible. We're responsible for our airplanes. And we know there are things we need to improve. I'd grown up on a farm in Iowa. My parents taught me the value of hard work and integrity.
To do the aw shucks Iowa farm boy thing, I'm an Iowa farm boy. It doesn't cut it with me, and it was grating.
Mr. Muilenburg, I have a question, because I probably won't get to ask it another time. Where you talked about Iowa just like one too many times, and the whole group said, "Go back to the farm. Go back to Iowa. Do that." You're not the person anymore to solve the situation. But I want to say it to you directly, because I don't think you understand what we're saying.
I respect that. I really do. In the end, it's about safety. And
Even if you're not capable of doing that.
I respect your inputs there. I just tell you, we are very focused on safety. And you have.
I wanted to pierce through to the human being. Imagine being in our shoes.
Just a couple months after the House hearing, Muilenburg was forced out as CEO of Boeing.
But while Muilenburg may be gone, the clouds of suspicion over Boeing remain.
And the Justice Department is investigating, and hopefully some people are going to go to jail.
We're going to turn now to the 737 MAX jet. It's making its first passenger flight since 2 deadly crashes.
The Boeing 737 MAX is flying around the world. Airlines have started flying it again. The question that some air travelers may have is it now safe to fly?
Tonight, Boeing 737 MAX jets are back in service. American Airlines today flying the first paying passengers in the U.S. since the fleet was grounded nearly 2 years ago.
The 737 MAX is back in action. Airlines are choosing to put the 737 MAXs back in the air. They waited a long time for that airplane.
I have the utmost confidence in the safety of this aircraft.
I didn't feel unsafe at all getting on the plane today.
Last November, the FAA cleared the 737 MAX to fly again after Boeing agreed to make several changes to the plane. MCAS now needs both angle of attack indicators to be in agreement in order to trigger, and it can only be fired once. MCAS will no longer be able to put the plane in the dramatic nosedive position that it did in the fatal accidents, and pilots are required to have simulator training.
I do think the 737 is a safe airplane. I'm happy to fly on the 737. I have no issue about that. And I think it's going to be a great airplane. I really do.
Now that these MAX planes are up in the air again, what do you think about what's happened?
The MAX plane is still dangerous. I know definitely that the planes are still unsafe and I can't get on this plane.
But while Boeing may have successfully relaunched the 737 MAX, there is still the question about whether the company will be held accountable for those two fatal crashes of the plane.
The Justice Department has launched a criminal investigation into the plane's development.
The criminal investigation began before the second accident. It began in 2018.
Prosecutors were trying to find whether or not Boeing had lied to the FAA. They spoke to, obviously, a number of Boeing employees.
But to the shock and dismay of the victims' families, this January, the Department of Justice suddenly announced that it was allowing Boeing to resolve the criminal case. In exchange, the company acknowledged that it engaged in a conspiracy to defraud the United States.
Boeing will pay $2.5 billion in a settlement over its 737 MAX planes.
You have to pay a very large financial penalty, $2.5 billion, but you never have a criminal conviction. The airlines get $1.77 billion. The victims who died in these two crashes and their heirs are getting $500 million. The only fine here that goes to the government is less than 10%.
I was just outraged. How is it that Boeing cannot be held to account by our justice system?
And the agreement seems to allow Boeing off the hook. It states the misconduct was neither pervasive across the organization, nor undertaken by a large number of employees, nor facilitated by senior management.
I find it interesting that the prosecutor says there's no pervasive wrongdoing at Boeing. Meanwhile, the House committee investigating the 737 MAX disasters finds people went to Boeing with their concerns about safety, and those concerns were not heeded.
Former Boeing test pilot is expected to face criminal charges in connection with the safety probe.
The only criminal charge resulting from the DOJ investigation is against Mark Faulkner. He's the chief technical pilot for Boeing who wrote those emails about tricking the FAA.
So Faulkner is the one on the frying pan right now, and the only one on the frying pan.
Faulkner was charged with deceiving safety regulators and faces decades in prison if convicted. He has pled not guilty.
This tragedy deserved a search for the truth, not a search for a scapegoat. The truth will show that Mark did not cause this tragedy, Mark did not lie, and Mark should not be charged.
He did something terribly wrong, supported by the company he was working for. I hope that Mark Faulkner's attorney will prevail in showing how many people were involved in this.
People read about air accidents and they think about the victims and they think, oh, geez, that's so sad. That's so sad, and it is. But I think what goes unappreciated is the fury of someone who must see that they've lost a loved one or many loved ones, and the culpability lies right there, and they will never get that justice. I think it's worse than grief.
But for the parents of Samia Stumo, there's much more to their daughter's legacy than just anger at Boeing.
There's a fellowship project in my daughter's name, and we have 5 young women doing global health projects in their countries. And these young women are emerging leaders like Samia was.
So you're doing the kind of work that Samia was doing?
Yes, I wish she could do it herself. We're going to make sure that Samia's effect in the world in terms of helping human beings is multiplied. I
know she would want her family to fight that other people not die.
Those fellowships a fitting legacy. And we should also point out tonight that in the civil suit that's been filed against Boeing by the victims' families, Boeing has accepted liability for the crashes and agreed not to blame the pilots.
In fact, they have admitted that Boeing itself was at fault. That's our program for tonight. I'm Amy Robach.
And I'm David Muir. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night. Tonight is a breakthrough on the horizon and one of the country's most high-profile unsolved mysteries.
JonBenet Ramsey, the name we all know, the case that shook America that Christmas nearly 30 years ago. Could there finally be a major turn in the case? 2020 begins right now.
I just kept saying, no, no, ask God to raise her.
I wanna be a cowboy.
JonBenet Ramsey, the story you can't forget, the case you think you know.
With all that attention, all that scrutiny, why hasn't this crime been solved?
One simple reason: the police have refused help that was offered, and it could have helped.
But now is the new documentary series changing the picture.
Go back to the damn drawing board.
So early on, they locked into this crazy idea that the parents were responsible. They get tunnel vision.
With new DNA technology, is a solution closer than ever.
We think the crime can be solved.
It's firing John Ramsey.
Tonight, the new John Ramsey interview.
You dwell on your loss, and you just can't do that.
And what you've never seen before. From the iconic Barbara Walters sit-down.
This was a monster that killed our daughter.
And the police think that it's you.
Now the detective who defied the police.
They knew at the time that there was DNA and that it was not from Ramsey's DNA.
And he just said, I have a name. I want you to write it down. And I did. And he said, that's where you start. All but one person on that list is innocent.
Then you got your killer.
She was a beautiful child of God. We knew she was special. We knew she was going to make a difference. We certainly didn't expect it to be this way. And yet, here's a child who is known literally around the world. So she did become special.
JonBenet Ramsey. She enjoys playing with the rabbit.
She is the special little girl, forever 6 years old. While JonBenet Ramsey remains frozen in time, her father has endured nearly 3 decades without justice, without answers, and without his daughter. I sat down for a new interview with the now 81-year-old John Ramsey.
Hello, sir. Byron Fitz. Byron John Ramsey.
I had JonBenet bless my life for 6 years, and she really was a blessing. Just an amazing little kid.
She was daddy's girl.
She was daddy's girl, big time.
Do you allow yourself to think, what if this hadn't happened?
I don't. I did run into one of her little friends on the street who was now, 30 and an adult. And that was a little bit of a jolt to think, wow, could have been JonBenet. She's still my little girl. That's the picture I have in my head when I think of her.
Ramsey has renewed hope that his daughter's killer can finally be found, confident that advances in DNA technology are the key to solving the mystery.
There's been a number of old cold cases solved using this genealogy research.
There was no more important story in the country than the disappearance and the death of your daughter.
Police have still not named a suspect.
It's now been 12 days since JonBenet Ramsey was murdered.
Officers have spent more than 3,000 hours processing evidence and interviewing more than 90 people.
With all that attention, all that scrutiny, why hasn't this crime been solved?
One simple reason: the police have refused help that was offered. They had no experience. They didn't have a homicide department.
That police response and its aftermath is the focus of a new Netflix docuseries, Cold Case: Who Killed JonBenet Ramsey?
Someone killed this 6-year-old child.
You have a small-town police force that gets a crime that they're not used to.
Is it fair to question the Boulder Police Department's experience, ability to investigate homicide?
I don't think so. Just because you have one homicide in a year, I think is actually a sign of remarkable strength in a community.
This was the first murder in Boulder that year, and it was December 26. So they don't have a lot of murders, particularly where a little girl is tortured to death.
John Ramsey worked with award-winning documentarian Joe Berlinger, who says he wanted to shed new light on what he calls one of the most brutalized families in American history.
Obviously, he wasn't legally wrongfully convicted, but he was wrongfully convicted, and his wife, Patsy, the family were wrongfully convicted in the court of public opinion.
You still feel like it's a cloud over your family name?
Yeah.
Because I guess because there are still people in the country who still believe
absolutely
that your wife were responsible.
No doubt. And we could have the killer confessed, arrested, in prison, and there'd still be 5 to 10% of the population that, yeah, it was the father, or yeah, it was the mother.
The hit docuseries has sparked a new generation of interest on social media.
Okay, one of my girlfriends and I have a new JonBenet theory, and I want to float it. I just finished the JonBenet Ramsey new documentary on Netflix, and holy I need to know what happened to JonBenet Ramsey.
With the wave of renewed scrutiny, the Boulder Police Department issued a video statement last month.
So much of how law enforcement works has changed in the last 30 years. There are a number of things that people have pointed to throughout the years that could have been done better, and we acknowledge that is true. However, it is important to emphasize that while we cannot go back to that horrible day in 1996, our goal is to find JonBenet Ramsey's killer.
That horrible day in 1996 began at Christmas time in the storybook neighborhood where the Ramsey family lived, in Boulder, Colorado.
There's a saying here in Colorado that Boulder is 30 square miles of fantasy surrounded by reality.
It's very wealthy, it's well-to-do.
John and Patsy Ramsey lived in a 6,700 square feet Tudor there on 15th Street.
John Ramsey was the CEO of a computer services company. He'd suffered tragedy before when his 22-year-old daughter, Beth, died in a car accident. In 1980, he married his new wife, Patsy.
By all accounts, they were a happy couple. Patsy was a high society woman.
I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. I'm a wife and a mother. John used to just tell people that I invested in futures, the futures of my children. That's how I usually answer my occupation.
John and Patsy Ramsey had 2 children together. Their firstborn was Burke, 9 years old, and JonBenet, 6.5, in kindergarten.
My name is John Andrew Ramsey, JonBenet's half-brother. JonBenet was just an energetic and fun kid.
Patsy Ramsey was a former beauty queen, Miss West Virginia. By the time JonBenet was 4 years old, she was in the pageant system herself.
I really believe that if we hadn't seen the beauty pageant photos of JonBenet Ramsey, it might have just gone into the ether as another child murder. This one captivated us because we saw the beauty pageant pictures.
Hello, I'm Patsy Ramsey. This is JonBenet. She's 4, Burke is 7.
Christmas was Patsy's favorite time, and she really went all out. She had a Christmas tree for every room, and every tree had a theme. The windows were done with garland, the staircases had garland, there were red ribbons everywhere.
And from all of us at our house to everyone at your house, Merry Christmas and the happiest of New Year's.
There was plenty to celebrate that Christmas of 1996. Patsy had been battling ovarian cancer and was finally in remission. On Christmas morning, the family opened presents in their home.
They were going to a friend's house for dinner that night.
We were going to leave early the next morning for a trip to our summer cottage in Michigan. So we came home, set the alarm, and went to sleep.
This is your first extended interview.
In 2000, Barbara Walters spoke to the couple about that terrible day.
You get up, you're dressed. What happens?
I went down our steps from our bedroom to the second floor. Then I started walking down the spiral staircase. And as I came to the bottom of the stairs, there were 3 pages neatly laid across one of the runs of the stairway.
She picked up the note and she started to read it.
I just remember when I read, "We have your daughter," it just, this overwhelming fear.
And then?
And then I just screamed for John, screamed.
Take me back to that day.
I was shaving or getting dressed, and I heard Patsy scream, and we called the police immediately.
We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on. What's your name? Are you Patsy Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God!
I was the call taker that night shift when the call came in.
Police, what's going on 15th Street? What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? Oh my God! Please.
She's hysterical, and she says there's a kidnapping.
Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out and she's not here. Oh my God, please.
The note said, if you do anything, if police come, if FBI come, your daughter will die. You called 911.
Yes, I did. I had to do something. I had to take action.
And I mean, all this happened in a matter of moments.
Patsy Ramsey called 911 at 5:52 a.m., and the first officer from the Boulder Police Department arrives 3 minutes later at 5:55.
We called friends for help at that point. Your daughter is gone.
Desperate.
She's in the hands of a madman.
My phone rang. Pam, they've got her. What do you mean they've got her? They've kidnapped John Bonet. She's gone.
What was the atmosphere like as you sat and waited?
Well, it was awful. First of all, we didn't know whether the kidnapper was going to call that day because the note said, "I will call you tomorrow. Get plenty of rest." I was deathly afraid that tomorrow was in fact the 27th.
You lose all perception of time, of place. You've just been dealt a horrible, crushing blow.
At 6 o'clock on the morning of December 26th, the police came in and did a cursory search of the residence. It was a lavish home with about 18 rooms.
The police did a terrible, terrible job securing that scene. And if you don't secure the scene, you don't get good evidence.
The mistakes they made were outrageous, they were mystifying, they were mistake after mistake after mistake.
People were streaming through that house. They were in the kitchen, they were in the living room. There were some friends of Patsy's that were helping her wipe up the kitchen. There could have been fingerprints there.
You had friends that were Windexing the sink and washing dishes. And
People were making toast in the kitchen. And yes, a kidnapping is a crime scene, but we were so focused on getting John Bonet back. That was the task.
What we have learned is that everyone should have been sequestered into an area so that people weren't roaming around the house.
And that was a mistake on my part. The reason I didn't is because these people were the Ramsey's support system. There was no information at all to indicate the family was involved at that point.
It was a crime scene, and it was getting contaminated. The note was being passed around and reviewed by all of their friends.
Of all of the evidence left behind, that ransom note is the most baffling. Number one, it is too damn long. A ransom note is not that long. A ransom note says, I have your child, I want $1 million, I'll call you later.
The note was 3 pages and written in longhand.
That ransom note was the War and Peace of ransom notes.
It begins, Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully.
You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills.
You think about this number and how is it relevant? And it's relevant because John Ramsey got a bonus from his company for $118,000. How many people knew that? I'm going to guess not a lot of people.
This footage of Barbara Walters' interview with the Ramseys in 2000 has never aired until now.
The ransom note asked for an odd figure, $118,000. That was a bonus that you had received.
Well, that was one of the theories that I came up with, that it was close to the net amount I'd received that year as a bonus. 118 means something to the killer. We know that. We believe that. Whether it's tied to my bonus or something only the killer knows, we don't know.
Did you know that your husband got this kind of a bonus?
Not at the time, no.
Lou Smith, a detective who would later be brought into the case to re-examine the evidence, noticed something else unusual about the ransom note. Some of the phrases appear to mimic lines in movies about kidnappings. Lou Smith recorded his observations about the case.
John? The movie Ransom was playing in Boulder.
I have your son.
Oh, Jesus.
I want $2 million.
Oh, God.
In that particular movie, a fat cat industrialist, his son was kidnapped. There's a lot of the same verbiage in this note as was in even the note that was written in that particular movie.
If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies.
A kidnapper says a similar line to Clint Eastwood in the movie Dirty Harry.
If you talk to anyone, I don't care if it's a Pekingese pissing against a lamppost, the girl dies.
You and your family are under constant scrutiny, as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. That's a line used by a terrorist in the movie Speed.
Do not attempt to grow a brain. Our guy's a real watcher of that particular type of movies.
The ransom note was a vital piece of evidence. Police need to figure out who wrote it and when.
On the morning of December 26, the minutes ticked by as the Ramseys waited to hear from the kidnapper.
It was awful.
The kidnappers had written that they would telephone you by 10 a.m.
All I prayed for was he would call.
But it would be a discovery inside the house that would change everything. The ransom note that Patsy Ramsey says she found indicated there would be a call between 8 and 10 a.m.
The police had prepped me on how to respond on a phone call, and very important is you hear John Benet's voice.
Police officers were leaving between 9:30 and 9:45 before that time period of the phone call had even expired. One lone detective was left on the scene.
Detective Linda Arndt is left behind in the house with John and Patsy Ramsey.
Arndt didn't have extensive homicide experience managing a kidnapping and what was about to unfold. This was likely pretty overwhelming for one lone police officer.
I was praying. Linda Arndt had said to me, we're hopeful that the kidnappers will just drop JonBenet off someplace. And I kept looking out the window, clutching this cross and just imagining that she was going to come running down the street.
They're waiting for a telephone call from the kidnapper. What's going to happen next?
My former ABC News colleague, Elizabeth Vargas, did one of the first extensive interviews with Detective Linda Arndt.
10 o'clock comes and goes, and there's no acknowledgement that the deadline imposed by the author of the ransom note is come and gone.
Nobody said it's 10 o'clock and the kidnappers haven't called?
Nobody said that.
According to Arndt, neither John nor Patsy Ramsey seemed to mark it or freak out about it. She says later she found it curious that John Ramsey checked his mail in the kitchen in the middle of the crisis.
How are you supposed to act when you...
Oh, I don't know for sure, but I really thought I could get JonBenet back if I kept my wits about me. You know, there was a pile of envelopes that had come through our front door slot. I was looking for another communication for the kidnapper. She should have been doing that.
Linda Arndt tells the restless John, why don't you look around the house, see if anything is missing or looks strange.
Check the house, top to bottom. Look for anything that might belong to JonBenet that is in place where it shouldn't be.
Were you at that point giving him perhaps a little bit of distraction, busy work?
I wanted to lessen his anxiety by giving him a job to do, a task, a meaningless task.
John took a friend with him. They went to the basement, and John opened the door.
You opened the door to the small room.
I knew instantly what I'd found. I'd found my daughter. She was lying on a white blanket. The blanket was wrapped around her. Her hands were tied above her head. She had tape over her mouth. I immediately knelt down over her, felt her cheek, took the tape off immediately off her mouth. I tried to untie the cord that was around her arms. I couldn't get the knot untied. Picked her up, and I ran upstairs and laid her on the floor and still had a hope that she was alive.
And I see John Ramsey carrying JonBenet up the last 3 steps from the basement. She looked like she was sleeping. She had some marks on her face and on her neck. I knelt next to her and I leaned down to her face. And John leaned down opposite and he asked if she was dead. And I said, yes, she's dead. And as we looked at each other, I remember, and I wore a shoulder holster, tucking my gun right next to me and consciously counting, I've got 18 bullets.
Why did you do that?
Because I didn't know if we'd all be alive when people showed up.
She clearly felt in danger at that moment. She made it clear that she thought John Ramsey killed his daughter and that he might kill her.
Linda Arndt's ability to look in someone's eyes and determine they were a killer is a remarkable talent.
We reached out to Detective Arndt to ask her about her reaction back then, but she did not respond. Ramsey has long been upset with her.
She said, yeah, I saw it in John's eyes. I knew he was guilty. That was the detective that was there that morning.
How is it that you have all these cops searching a home and nobody finds the body, but you asked John Ramsey to go look for things out of the ordinary, and he finds his daughter in a room that had never been opened by anybody in law enforcement? That's crazy.
He lays her on the living room floor where just a few minutes before, friends and neighbors have been walking and, you know, bringing in fibers and whatever to contaminate the scene. And then the coup de grace. He grabs a blanket, which is full of who knows what kind of contaminants, and throws it over the body.
Patsy was being kept out of the room, and I didn't want Patsy to see JonBenet laying there like that.
I remember walking in and seeing her lying there in front of the Christmas tree. I knelt down over her and just laid my body on her body and my cheek against her cheek, and it was cold. And Father Raw was there. And he started saying the last rites, I believe. And I just kept saying, no, no, you know, ask God. Ask God to raise her.
So the kidnapping of JonBenet Ramsey has turned into the murder of JonBenet.
JonBenet Ramsey was violated and murdered in a horrific way. Many injuries to this little girl's body. The x-ray of her skull shows a massive fracture.
This is an 8-inch skull fracture, so we're talking a major blunt force. This is just a massive blow.
But the ultimate cause of her death was strangulation with something called a garrote.
It's a device of a string, and it's wrapped around what ends up being a piece of a paintbrush. And what happens is, as JonBenet is losing consciousness, she's leaning forward. And so this gets tighter and tighter, and you can see how it cuts into my hand. You can see exactly why it cut into her neck. And that ultimately, according to the ME, is what killed her.
If you look at the autopsy report, JonBenet died while being tortured. She was alive while she was being tortured.
There were signs that JonBenet had also been sexually abused. The broken pieces of paintbrush that were used for the garrote were also used to sexually assault her.
There were 4 people in that house, and 1 died overnight. From the very beginning, they suspected the parents.
Within minutes of JonBenet's body being found, this was who they were going to go after. And that's what they did.
The police are thinking, we got to talk to those parents, and we got to talk to them right now before they start getting their story straight together.
When JonBenet's body was brought out past the candy canes decorating the front of the house, there were only a couple of reporters outside to capture that. And then the media frenzy started.
JonBenet Ramsey, the little girl in Colorado, was murdered.
Beauty queen JonBenet. JonBenet's murder has frightened residents of Boulder.
News outlets from around the world had descended upon Boulder and were just hiding in trees and bushes and digging through our trash, following me around town. I mean, it was war.
The JonBenet Ramsey case was completely out of control.
You also have to remember the O.J. Simpson case had wrapped up. The 24-hour news cycle, their content had dried up. And so along came the Ramsey family, and we fit right into that slot.
JonBenet Ramsey was a precocious 6-year-old. She had been strangled to death in the basement of her own home.
You have the shock, this incredibly horrendous crime. And then you have these videos that surface of this beautiful young girl.
JonBenet Ramsey! Dark blonde hair and green eyes.
Dancing in her costumes, and those were the first viral videos.
She'd like to become an Olympic ice skater.
People who didn't really grow up in the South and understand that industry, the industry of beauty pageants, thought it was the most horrible exploitation of a child they'd ever seen. So when those images started playing across the television, people started thinking, what's wrong with that family?
For many, this was their first glimpse into the world of child pageants. Long before shows
Tested 15.
like Toddlers and Tiaras.
Number 65, Alana.
But John Ramsey tells me it was something that would bring joy to JonBenet and his wife, Patsy.
The pageant photos came out, and that made it more juicy.
Yeah.
And that was just something that Patsy and JonBenet had fun with.
JonBenet never participated in what I would call a beauty contest. She participated in a talent show.
She would sing and dance?
She would sing, she would dance.
I want to be a cowboy, sweetheart. I want to learn to rope and to ride.
These were such a small, minuscule part of what JonBenet was all about. I think it's just because the photographs were so available and so beautiful that it took on a life of its own.
It's part of what turned it into an international circus.
This little girl's image was everywhere overnight.
The biggest negative factor about John and Patsy Ramsey was that they had allowed their daughter to be in child beauty pageant contests, and people did not like them.
But to think they would murder their own daughter was unimaginable. Yet police found evidence that, in their minds, pointed towards the Ramseys.
When you start with children of this age, when they die, tend to die at the hands of their parents. So the focus is naturally going to be on the parents to begin with. Now, in the house, the ransom note is written on a pad that belongs to Patsy. This is the notepad. This location right here is where the note was physically found by Patsy. The pen that was used was in the house.
The garrote that was used in JonBenet's murder also got the attention of investigators because of what it was made of.
It basically is an artist's paintbrush that's broken, and what's important is that it actually came from Patsy's art supply.
And there were even fibers on the backside of the duct tape that had been on JonBenet's mouth from Patsy's clothing.
And that was important, but Patsy lived in the house, so those could have been there anyway.
The police started thinking, well, maybe this is just a cover-up, that the Ramseys harmed their child some way, then panicked and tried to create basically a kidnapping scenario.
Patsy and John should have been taken to the police station immediately for separate interviews, for examination of their body for defensive wounds, for collection of their clothing. That never happened.
At this point, they haven't interviewed the mother or father. Not surprisingly, they're still very grief-stricken. They have not been in any kind of condition to be interviewed.
My father, myself, we all marched into that police station, gave blood, we gave hair, we gave fingerprints. The thing that really stuck with me is two detectives hand me their business cards, and one says narcotics officer and the other says auto theft. And I bury my head into my hands because I knew at that point we were in a bad spot.
Though the police had spoken to John Ramsey after JonBenet's body was found, what they really wanted to do was formally interrogate the couple.
The police are thinking, we got to talk to those parents, and we got to talk to them right now before they start getting their story straight together.
Your lawyers advised you then not to submit to police questions. Why not, people say? Wouldn't you have wanted to tell them everything?
Well, I don't recall that our lawyers told us that at the time. We said, you know, yeah, we want to keep working with you, but can't you come here? We can't go out. Patsy was in bed. Patsy was barely able to move. We were perfectly willing and anxious to work with the police to find the killer. We had a higher priority at that point, and that was to bury our daughter.
The family is flying the body back to Atlanta for burial.
On New Year's Eve, JonBenet was laid to rest just outside Atlanta, Georgia.
This service is in loving memory of JonBenet Patricia Ramsey.
We flew back to Atlanta to bury JonBenet. Atlanta being our home. Atlanta being where my oldest sister Beth is buried.
We give thanks today for JonBenet, for the love that she had for her parents.
I want to go back to the funeral.
Whatever we do, we're gonna go through it together. We may not get far, but sure as the star, wherever we are, it's together.
Wherever we are, it's together.
We sang that. She and I sang that together. We'd sing it driving in the car, and we just knew that we would always be together in everything. I wanted my children to know that I was with them through thick and thin, regardless of what happened in life. You know, unconditional love.
Oh, look at that. You can go places now.
Everybody wanted to see these parents. Everybody wanted to talk to these parents, especially the police.
When you realized that you two were the prime suspects, what did you think?
The Boulder police did not interrogate the Ramseys, but they remained the main suspects. Many people found the Ramseys' behavior peculiar and suspicious, and from that, many presumed they must be guilty.
When you realized that you two were the prime suspects, what did you think? What did you feel? What did you say?
Well, we were outraged. We were shocked. How could they think that? We were a normal family.
I just didn't believe it. You just can't believe it. I mean, you were suffering from having lost our child. And then for someone to accuse you, it's just, you can't believe that would happen.
Then 6 days after the murder, they go on CNN and say they didn't do it.
If anyone knows anything, please, please help us.
We've sensed from our friends that this tragedy has touched not just ourselves and our friends, but many people.
As a mother, my heart went out to this couple.
And if I were a resident of Boulder, I will tell my friends to keep your babies close to you. There's someone out there.
Some people thought it was odd they were talking to the public rather than to the police.
You did an interview on CNN. Why did you do that?
We did it reluctantly and at the insistence of some friends who could see that we were being painted as guilty.
Unfortunately, at that time, we were so, and when we look back at it, we were so distraught and medicated. It was probably not giving the impression that he had hoped we would achieve.
Police end their 10-day search of the Ramsey house and remove the crime scene tape.
It is unknown if the family intends to resume residency at the home. We have no comment on the whereabouts of the family at this time.
Starting from the beginning of this case, we, the media, blacked up what the Boulder Police Department wanted to tell us about what they were doing in the JonBenet Ramsey case.
For the most part, the police didn't say much. They didn't leak a lot of information. But when they did, it was major. They thought the mother did it.
Some people who believe Patsy killed her daughter believe it was over bedwetting and then staged it to look like an intruder. The bedwetting theory was a big theory at the time.
I'm a cancer survivor of stage 4 cancer. When you are standing on the brink of death with a terminal illness, your priorities suddenly line up. Bedwetting is totally insignificant. I love my children. I wouldn't harm them for anything in the world.
But many Americans were riveted by that possibility that the Ramseys might have done this.
Some of the authorities have said that you staged this, that you loosely tied your daughter's hands, that you put the noose, the garrote, to make it look as if some terrible person had done this, that this whole picture was staged.
Well, that's absurd. This was done by a terrible person. The garrote was deeply embedded in JonBenet's throat. Her hands were tightly bound. I couldn't get the knot untied. I tried to get it untied even before I brought her upstairs. And to say that we accidentally murdered our daughter and then staged this is nonsense.
If we had staged it, why would we have disturbed it?
Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, did either of you have anything to do with the death of your daughter?
No.
No. Mr. Ramsey, did you kill JonBenet?
No, I did not.
Mrs. Ramsey, did you kill your daughter?
No, I did not kill my daughter.
How do you feel when I ask you these questions?
Insulted, pain, hurtful. How can I tell you how much I love my daughter? I love her from the depths of my being. It's just unimaginable.
There was a Gallup poll at the time that said something like 70% of the American public thought that you or your wife were guilty.
I remember reading that. And it's like, well, I get it. That's what you were told over and over again.
There's so many puzzle pieces here that just don't fit.
Do you really think your daughter's murderer will be found?
Yes, I do. Because the killer has never been pursued. An objective wide investigation hasn't taken place. The parents have been focused on. That's all that's been done.
I think it's solvable. I really believe it's solvable given today's technology.
There are a lot of people in this country who hope that that crime is solved in your lifetime.
The suspect might be out there and be someone who's completely unknown, who has never been on anyone's radar.
What we know is that just within a few mile radius of the Ramseys' home, there was approximately 38 to 40 sex offenders in that area. And the question is, have they all been completely vetted?
And decades later, granddaughters of one of the investigators joined the search for the killer.
There's a lot more evidence to cover and more myths to debunk.
But I do want to get the truth out there. Was it an accident? Was it intentional? Premeditated?
I want to say something to the person or persons that took this baby from us. The list of suspects narrows. Soon there will be no one on the list but you.
Our killer is John Bonet. How many victims has he had in the past? And how many victims is he going to have in the future?
Tonight, the new focus on one of the most haunting unsolved cases of the last 30 years. Will the spotlight push the police for further DNA testing?
I just need some specifics from the police. Are you doing this? Are you doing this?
Now, new interviews.
They targeted you, John. They wanted to hurt you. And they did that by killing your daughter.
What you've never heard before from Patsy Ramsey.
The police were more concerned with feeding the frenzy of media sharks every day than in finding the killer of our daughter.
The detective who left the police to pursue his own investigation.
Lou dedicated a big part of his life to finding John Bonet's murderer.
Detective Lou Smith was like, whoa.
He just said, I have a name. I want you to write it down.
Is the answer in the list he left behind?
Our grandfather was a detective on one of the biggest unsolved murders in our generation.
Do you think if they'd taken the help offered 28 years ago, this case would have been solved by now?
Oh, yeah. I have no doubt.
It's a good opportunity to really find out who did this.
John Bonet was an entertainer. She would entertain at the drop of a hat.
She loved to sing and dance and perform. It was a natural for her.
I competed with John Bonet. She had all these wonderful costumes and outfits, and she had this presence.
Third runner-up, John Bonet.
It wasn't really a competition to her. It was more of like, this is fun, like let's go on stage and do that.
My name is John Bonet Ramsey, and I'm 5.5.
What is your favorite animal at the zoo?
The monkeys, because they laugh and stuff and hang around.
Today, John Bonet Ramsey would have been 34 years old.
I was her age. She would be my age now. She would be pursuing her own career. She never got to grow up. She is frozen in time now.
Well, the police were convinced pretty early on that Patsy and/or John were involved. And you had a district attorney's office that was saying, not so fast. And that created enormous tension between the two.
Did you hear anything yesterday? I think there are some new developments.
Alex Hunter, the district attorney, wanted someone to come in with fresh eyes in this case and look at it from the perspective of a defense attorney. Who might have killed John Bonet as an intruder, not just the parents, but from the outside?
Boulder DA Alex Hunter brought Lou Smith out of retirement to help solve the Ramsey case.
One of the great challenges is to try to do the case right. And, you know, I think we're making efforts to meet that challenge by involving people like Lou Smith.
My name is Lou Smith. I'm a retired homicide detective from the Colorado Springs Police Department.
legendary guy. And he said, I follow the evidence. I have got to follow the evidence. Doesn't matter what my opinion is, what I might think, I follow the evidence. And he did. And that takes a lot of discipline.
Smith had a history of closing cases.
He had such tenacity. He was a bulldog. Once he got something in his mind, once he got the reins in his teeth, he was not letting go.
Lou Smith was my father. He was just known as, the detective that solved cases. When he got to a murder scene, he spent time dictating everything he saw. Where the sun was in the sky, what the weather conditions were like, what the neighboring houses looked like.
The legend of Lou Smith is now the stuff of podcasts with granddaughters Jessa and Lexi unspooling the crime for a new generation.
He advocated for the victim and stood in their shoes.
So that's why we've chosen The Victim's Shoes as our podcast name. Prior to this case, Lou Smith had investigated over 200 homicide cases that led to arrests and convictions. Lou dedicated a big part of his life to finding JonBenét's murderer.
When he started his investigation, he felt like everybody else did, that it was probably one of the two parents.
It seemed as though the parents were probably involved in it. I thought this would be a fairly easy case. I thought it would be a slam dunk. And I even remember talking to my daughter. I kind of joked with her, saying that, if somebody did get in the house, it must have been Santa Claus coming down the chimney.
It was within a couple of days after my dad started on the investigation, when he had a chance to review pictures, the evidence, that he was already saying, I think that they need to look the other way. He was already noting in his journal that he felt that they needed to look at an intruder.
Lou came up with the intruder theory. You can't think about that theory without associating it with Lou Smith.
The first thing that stood out to him was an open window in the basement. There was a suitcase propped up against it.
He didn't buy the Boulder Police Department's conclusion that no one could get in that basement window. He began to say maybe somebody did get into that house.
And I'll show you how easily it can be done.
So what did Lou Smith do? He went and climbed in the window himself with a camera rolling to prove that it could be done.
It really wasn't that difficult coming in that window.
But is Smith's own theory compromised by the very crime scene photos he himself has studied?
There are cobwebs in the window, which could support that no one did go through this window. The big question is, could you have gotten through this window, this small window, without disturbing this cobweb? I think the answer to that is maybe. But the other important point is, how soon was this picture taken after JonBenet was killed? Because spiders can replicate webs very fast.
Also found in the basement by JonBenet's body, a shoe print, a high-tech brand that did not match any of the shoes in the Ramsey's house.
The investigators believe, and maybe rightly so, that that's the bad guy's footprint.
The counter-argument is that footprint image could have been inadvertently left by police officers at the scene, but a more disturbing image in Lou Smith's investigation comes from two marks left on JonBenet's face and back.
The marks themselves, both on the back and on the face, were the same distance apart. Suddenly a little light went on, and it was just like, wait a minute, it was a stun gun.
Smith looked at other murders where a stun gun was known to have been used. He examined photos of a crime victim who had a known stun gun wound.
And the marks are very similar to the face of JonBenet.
He also looked into an experiment performed using stun guns on pigs. These marks were also the same as the marks found on JonBenet.
When we did the pigs, we get perfect marks, just almost like on the back of JonBenet.
This brings back our grandpa's whole motto that things are usually what they seem. Don't make it complicated.
To make things less complicated, Smith transferred all his knowledge and thoughts about the case to VHS tape, leaving behind a 6-hour video presentation of his intruder theory.
There's no reason at all for the Ramseys to use a stun gun, and the Ramseys don't have a stun gun. If it's not a stun gun, what is it? That's the question I always ask. You tell me what it is.
Lou Smith stood up and said, wait a second, we need to look at this again. It actually is possible. It actually is plausible. And in his mind, it's actually the most likely scenario. But there have been challenges from the beginning of this case. There were published reports that the Boulder Police Department refused to accept assistance from outside law enforcement.
Denver police called and offered 2 experienced homicide detectives to come work at Boulder under their direction full-time. They turned it down.
Do you think if they'd taken the help offered 28 years ago, this case would have been solved by now?
Oh, yeah. I have no doubt. I've been told by experienced homicide detectives over the years, this is not a hard case to solve, but they needed to be on it immediately.
Lou Smith thought that the Ramseys were being targeted unfairly.
Thought there was something drastically wrong. I had seen evidence of an intruder.
One thing the police and the district attorney do agree on, both want the Ramseys to come in for a formal videotaped interrogation. And when that day finally comes, it gets heated.
Go back to the damn drawing board. I didn't do it.
Within a few weeks of John Bonet's murder, police had an important clue. The discovery of foreign DNA found underneath her fingernails and in her underwear.
DNA that does not match the Ramsey family, and it shows a foreign male presence. They sat on that for months.
They knew at the time that there was DNA in her panties. That it was mixed foreign DNA, and that it was not the Ramsey's DNA. Not Patsy's, not John's, and not Burke's.
Detective Lou Smith was like, whoa, while you're pouring water all over the intruder theory, you're not revealing that you have unidentified DNA and it doesn't match anybody in the Ramsey family.
Lou is just incensed that the focus is still being, well, it could be Patsy, maybe we need to get her to confess.
The police had eventually interviewed the couple 4 months after Jean Bonet's death, but now authorities want the Ramseys to come in again for videotaped interrogation.
There were months and months of negotiations. Things about whether they could be videotaped. What are the questions going to be? Should the Boulder police be a part of it? Because the Ramseys said, we don't trust the police. We don't want them there.
Ultimately, the interrogation took place at a different police department, and the Boulder police had to watch it from another building.
The Ramseys finally sit down with the police for 3 days of videotaped interrogations in June 1998, a year and a half after Jean Bonet's murder.
We were there for as long as they wanted, would have stayed for 2 weeks had they wanted. The myth that we didn't cooperate is nonsense.
When you were interrogated by the police, you were interrogated separately.
Yes.
Today is Wednesday, June the 24th, 1998. I'm president of the Broomfield Police Department. Patricia Ramsey.
Tom Haney, who was one of the most respected homicide detectives out of Denver, was chosen to interview Patsy Ramsey.
Patsy Ramsey had a year and a half to prepare. I knew that it was going to be tough to get a spontaneous response.
Do you ever recall purchasing black duct tape like this? It seems like there can't be a house in the world that doesn't have duct tape because it repairs everything.
Well, I never liked it because it's so gooey. Isn't it gooey?
He started out softly and kindly and curious, and then he got pointed with his questions, and that made Patsy angry.
If I told you right now that we have, in the process of being examined, trace evidence that appears to link you to the death of John Bonet, what would you tell me?
That is totally impossible. Go retest.
How is it impossible?
I did not kill my child. I didn't have a thing to do with it.
She said it was impossible that we had physical evidence linking her to the crime.
I'm talking about scientific evidence.
I don't give a flying flip how scientific it is. Go back to the damn drawing board. I didn't do it. John Ramsey didn't do it, and we didn't have a clue of anybody who did do it.
I am so taken with her swagger. She just tells them, you know, you think you have some evidence on me? Well, you better look again.
We love that child, okay? We're not involved. Read my lips. Let's find out who is. My life has been hell from that day forward. And I can't stand the thought of thinking somebody's out here walking on the street. God knows we might do it again to some other child. You know, quit screwing around asking me about things that are ridiculous and let's find the person that did this.
Patsy was feisty. She was combative, in stark contrast to John Ramsey, who was interrogated by Lou Smith.
When Lou interviewed someone, he pried anything out of people just by being understanding and really listening.
Now, John, and I know this is touching right back on a very delicate spot, but was this tape wrapped around anywhere? Was it stuck down?
It was very firm across her lips. I reached out, flipped the latch, opened the door, I knew immediately what I found.
Okay, and you say immediately?
There was a white blanket, and I just knew I found her.
How were you standing with her?
The interrogation tapes are intriguing to watch, as there's a lot of raw emotion shown by both John and Patsy Ramsey. But the bottom line is both John and Patsy deny that anyone in their family killed JonBenet, and there was nothing revealed that allowed for charges to be brought against them.
And we want to do everything we can to help solve this case for you.
My dad's conclusions after that interview were just firmed up his belief that the Ramseys had nothing to do with this murder.
I'm not saying parents don't kill their kid. Parents do kill their children. So, but they're trying to say Patsy did. Their actions before, during, and after are all consistent with innocent people. You didn't do it.
My dad started getting frustrated as time went on because he felt that the case against the Ramseys was being slanted where no other evidence was coming in.
I thought there was something drastically wrong and that there was a gross injustice in this case. I had seen evidence of an intruder in the house that night.
Lou Smith thought that the Ramseys were being targeted unfairly, and he didn't believe the police were listening to him.
Smith so strongly disagrees with the prosecutor's focus on the Ramseys that he is resigning from the case, saying, "The case tells me John and Patsy Ramsey did not kill their daughter."
He wrote a letter to Alex Hunter telling them that he couldn't be a part of the persecution of these people, is how he termed it.
He wrote, "I intend to stand with this family and somehow help them through this and find the killer of their daughter."
My dad may have resigned from the district attorney's office, but he never stopped work on the case. He walked in JonBenet's shoes, and he owed it to her, he felt, to continue his investigation.
One thing Lou Smith fought to do was tell a grand jury his side of the story, the intruder theory. There were too many unanswered questions, in particular, that male DNA in JonBenet's underwear that didn't match anyone that they knew of. Who could it be?
Grand jurors arrived at the Boulder County Justice Center this morning and were escorted into the courthouse by sheriff's deputies.
There was enormous pressure on District Attorney Alex Hunter to call for a grand jury, and it took him almost 2 years to actually call one. I think it was the media pressure and pressure from the police that forced him to make that call.
You know, a lot of work went into it. You have to remember, this case was happening just after other high-profile murder cases in the country.
What did you think of your parents at that point by October 31st?
I thought they were these great people that I had killed.
From the Menendez brothers to O.J. Simpson.
O.J. did it!
Those high-profile cases were on most of the country's mind.
Good morning, Counsel. Most people think the evidence of Simpson's guilt was insurmountable.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
And yet, he walked. Alex remembered that. He told me one time, "I don't want to spend 2 years of my life and $5 million of the taxpayers' money and lose in court.
Alex Hunter sat a grand jury for 13 months.
Are you surprised by anything you've seen?
No. Over 13 months, those people heard over 100 witnesses.
My name is Jonathan Webb. I was a grand juror on the JonBenet Ramsey case. It bothers me that the murder of a little girl like this has gone on unsolved for essentially a quarter century.
Members of the grand jury looking like detectives themselves as they finally toured the Ramsey house.
From a crime scene perspective, it was very disturbing how she was found. She's on a concrete floor, a garrote around her neck, and she's 6 years old. That's pretty horrible.
Webb told us that the grand jury spent most of their time focused on two main issues. First, who wrote that ransom note?
We heard from 3 handwriting experts, and even though the handwriting experts couldn't definitively say that she wrote it, they all 3 came to the same conclusion that it could have been Patsy Ramsey.
The Ramsey's defense team had their own experts who said that the comparison between the writing on the ransom note and Patsy's handwriting was not conclusive.
And the grand jury believed that she wrote it.
The second focus for the grand jury, according to Jonathan Webb, was the viability of the intruder theory.
Smith actually presented his intruder theory to the grand jury.
This is the very first photo taken of a training room basement window. The window is wide open. Now, if I was a detective, I'd have said, wow, this is entry.
But the grand jury wasn't buying the intruder theory because of those cobwebs in the window.
The intruder theory didn't make sense to the grand jury. The Boulder police had photographed cobwebs. So for someone to get through a small opening like that and not disturbing a cobweb would be remarkable.
A grand jury doesn't decide guilt or innocence the way a regular jury does. The grand jury is only there to decide whether or not there's probable cause to charge the suspects with a crime.
We were troubled by, to what level of confidence do we need to have to vote to indict? And it's the preponderance of the evidence, which means greater than 50%. And soon after that, we voted to indict.
The grand jury was looking at 2 specific accusations for the Ramseys: child abuse resulting in death and accessory to a crime. The grand jury couldn't point the finger at Patsy or John specifically, but they were sure that one of them committed the crime and the other person helped to carry it out.
This is 7 News at 5.
There is high anticipation in Boulder right now for a Ramsey decision, and we are about to hear an announcement from Boulder DA Alex Hunter.
I and my prosecution task force believe we do not have sufficient evidence to warrant the filing of charges against anyone who has been investigated at this time.
I was shocked. It's extremely unusual for a grand jury to vote to charge and the DA not charge.
I think deciding not to prosecute the parents for homicide was the right decision. No matter what you believe about the case, it would have been very difficult to get a conviction.
Thank you very much.
There were too many questions, in particular, that DNA in the underwear that appears to have been from a man didn't match anyone they knew of.
That's why Lou Smith continued investigating even after he resigned from the case.
He had condensed everything he knew about every person of interest into a spreadsheet.
It's like a PowerPoint on steroids. It detailed 887 names.
But I think what turned this whole case has always been DNA. The killer left behind, I believe, part of his DNA.
On their podcast, Lou Smith's granddaughter spoke about his focus on the DNA in the case.
Over nearly 13 years, Lou took all of the information that he had on this case and developed a database. In this particular murder, he thought that DNA would solve this case.
And thanks to major advances in DNA, a number of big surprises were about to come to the case.
What became groundbreaking at the time was a thing called touch DNA. Essentially, when someone touches something, the skin cells they leave behind can be tested.
In 2008, the then district attorney for Boulder, Mary Lacey, decided to do a new round of DNA testing on JonBenét's pajama leggings.
Remember, there was already DNA from an unknown male found under JonBenét's fingernails and in her underwear. But analysis of touch DNA on her leggings uncovered something new. DNA from at least one unknown male, maybe two.
In recent months, investigators used that new procedure, which helped them discover fresh DNA on JonBenét's long johns, left by the killer's fingertips.
Now new DNA analysis proves just that. The Boulder District Attorney clears all members of the Ramsey family in the murder of their 6-year-old daughter, JonBené.
That's a pretty big development. You've got DNA now in 3 places that doesn't match anybody in the Ramsey family. That's a pretty clear indication that somebody else was there, and nobody knows whose DNA it is.
This revelation of this new unmatched DNA drove the district attorney to announce they're no longer looking at the family.
The news broke here at the district attorney's office with this incredible letter to JonBenét's father.
DA Mary Lacey wrote John Ramsey, "We do not consider your immediate family, including you, your wife Patsy, and your son Burke, to be under any suspicion in the commission of this crime."
The DA also apologized to the Ramseys. She wrote in part, "To the extent that we may have contributed in any way to the public perception that you might have been involved in this crime, I am deeply sorry." John Ramsey responded to the DA's letter and the stunning development on a local newscast.
We're certainly grateful for an acknowledgement that we are innocent, that this was an intruder, which of course we've always maintained.
But this is a reminder how often that they are human beings and how often they get it wrong, how often their biases take them down the wrong path.
Somebody told me in the police world, they said the most dangerous thing is the police department.
Investigating the JonBené Ramsey murder case. But eventually, he ran out of time.
When he got sick with cancer, he knew that his time was limited. And so during that time, he just talked to others about not letting this case die.
He had people coming every single day, 60 to 70, 80 people a day, coming to see him. And they said their goodbyes. And during that time, he would still talk about the case.
I remember about the last 3 days, he had slipped into a coma, and the conversations would become one way. You know, and I don't know if you could hear me or not.
I'm John Ramsey. I had the opportunity to visit Lou a week before he died. Remarkably, during that time together, Lou talked a lot about the case. He hadn't given up. He never gave up.
Lou Smith's legacy lives on, and his tenacity to solve this case was passed on to his daughter, Cindy Mara.
And he just said, "I have a name. I want you to write it down." And I did. And he said, "That's where you start." You know, we'd be glad to pay that. We don't have that electronic report, so we would need Boulder to send it. After my dad died, you know, a couple of us, our family, and then some of his old homicide partners, we just formed a team.
You want to go down to number 2, because that is an in-state one.
Yep.
What we all share in common is that commitment to fulfill Lou's dying wish, that this case doesn't die with him. And I think it's that devotion, that respect, that love for Lou is what keeps our team moving forward.
According to investigators, there were other possible suspects, including a local Santa in town who had previous interactions with the Ramseys.
There's no way in the world that I could be involved in the death of this little girl. I adored her.
But there's another man who comes forward with a claims he's responsible for John Bonet's murder.
I love John Bonet, and she died accidentally.
The mystery surrounding the murder of John Benet Ramsey haunted Lou Smith until the day he died. But he left behind that detailed list, hoping that one day John Bonet's killer would finally be brought to justice.
He had condensed everything he knew about every person of interest into a spreadsheet.
It was like a PowerPoint on steroids. The spreadsheet detailed 887 names.
He wanted us to take the list that he had and try and keep the case alive.
Out of those 887 entries, by the time he went into hospice, Lou had marked 134 cleared.
Over the years, there have been many leads that seemed promising at one time or another.
That new Netflix documentary, Making News, details how just months after Jean Bonet's murder, a 12-year-old girl who lived less than 2 miles from the Ramseys was attacked as she slept in her bed.
Sometime in the late hours, Mom hears a noise going on.
And there was, in fact, an intruder in her daughter's bedroom preparing to molest her. That person has never been identified. That girl had attended the same dance studio as John Bonet. Are the two cases connected? I don't know.
Boulder police said that while the two cases had some similarities, they found no definitive connection.
In the search for the killer, investigators chased down countless leads, including a local transient.
Here you have Gary Oliva, who apparently on the night or the next day after John Bonet was killed, called a friend and told him over the phone that he had hurt a child.
All of a sudden I get a phone call, and it's Gary, and he's sobbing into the phone like I've never heard anybody sob in my entire life. I hurt a little girl.
He was a homeless man who hung out at a church just a block and a half from the Ramseys' home. And he confessed that he killed John Benet Ramsey.
They took a look at him, but eventually eliminated him because there is absolutely no connection between he and the Ramseys. And his DNA, they used that to eliminate him.
Investigators also looked into Bill McReynolds, a local Santa Claus who'd worked at the Ramseys' holiday parties.
John Bonet had made a comment that he, Bill McReynolds, was coming to their house to see John Bonet. I think everybody thought that was a little weird. His DNA didn't match, and he's out of the picture.
And then Alex Hunter, the Boulder County District Attorney, speaks directly to the killer.
I want to say something to the person or persons that committed this crime. The list of suspects narrows. Soon there will be no one on the list but you.
A day after the DA rattles the cage, a man named Michael Helgoth attracts the attention of authorities.
Michael Helgoth evidently committed suicide the day after the Boulder District Attorney threatened that, hey, we're going to find you.
The death of this child has broken all of our hearts. We will see that justice is served in this case and that you pay for what you did.
That speech was designed to get the killer nervous.
When Michael was found dead, there was a stun gun at his residence. Also, there was a pair of high-tech boots.
These two clues had previously been linked to John Bonet's murder.
Stun gun, a bit odd for people to have. High-tech boots, fairly common thing for people to have. But the real clincher would be DNA didn't match, and he has no connection to the Ramsey family.
And so investigators also eliminate Helgoth as a person of interest.
Investigators finally felt they had a real break in the case with John Mark Carr. He famously claimed he was with Jean Bonet when she died.
I love JonBenet. Die accidentally. No.
Her death was an accident.
So you were in the basement?
Yes.
Problem is, he wasn't in Boulder, Colorado when she died, and his DNA didn't match.
Even though Carr claimed he was in the basement when JonBenet died, there was just no physical evidence linking him to her murder. And so Carr was eliminated as a suspect.
Take a look at it.
Decades later, the search still goes on for the little girl's killer.
What our team has been doing is focusing on collecting DNA and testing DNA.
I think it's imperative that we investigate every credible suspect that's been provided.
If we keep at it, hopefully we'll finally whittle it down to one person remaining on that list.
Do you think you know who the killer is?
You know, no, I don't. And this is a very dark, evil person. I don't know anybody like that.
But could advances in DNA technology finally help catch the person who killed JonBenet? The JonBenet Ramsey case is just as mysterious today as it was in 1996, when her devastated parents were left with tiny mementos from their daughter to hold on to.
It makes me sad that there were happy little hands in this glove.
So the memories bring tears to your eyes, but you're also a little more at peace?
I don't know. I don't think I will be at peace until we find out who did this.
For Patsy Ramsey, sadly, her fight to find her daughter's killer ended in 2006 when she passed away.
Patsy died of ovarian cancer.
Yes.
Went through all of that without knowing that she'd been cleared.
That's correct.
She was buried next to JonBenet in Marietta, Georgia. But the search for justice continues.
I think it's even more mysterious now to some degree because who the heck was in that house? How'd they get in? Why'd they target her?
Lou Smith's family, dedicated to keeping the case moving forward, continues to work on whittling down a list they presented to law enforcement in 2020.
And what we presented was a confidential list of our top 20 people of interest and the list of the 8 people of interest that our team had eliminated through DNA analysis.
The technology has just advanced so tremendously. JonBenet's blood was mixed with unknown male DNA in her underpants, and we need to separate out those 2 profiles, which can be done now, and use genealogical DNA, which has been a huge tool in solving cold cases recently.
That technique has solved some old, dead cold cases. That's what we're asking the police to do.
Well, DNA science has progressed significantly since the early years of the JonBenet investigation, and investigators can now work with smaller, mixed, and degraded samples. There are still significant hurdles.
What will be your message to the Boulder Police Department today?
Look, just tell us, are you using one of these very cutting-edge labs to do additional DNA testing? If you are doing additional DNA testing, that's all I need to know.
According to the Boulder PD, investigators are utilizing outside labs and experts in the latest technology.
Our collaboration also includes the Colorado Cold Case Review Team, which is a panel of outside experts brought together in December of 2023 to review this case. Our department has had ongoing conversations with JonBenet's family, the last of which occurred in mid-2024. Our goal is to find JonBenet Ramsey's killer. Our commitment to that has never wavered.
The family has not lost the will to fight and the will to find the killer. If we can find the killer, then the next generation doesn't have to live with that trauma and the unknown and the speculation. If we leverage the evidence, we follow the facts, we will find this killer. My dad certainly suffered a tremendous amount, but I think he's focused on life today and enjoying life with his family and grandkids, and he's remarried.
But he says he's still always thinking of JonBenet, trying to focus on the positive of his beautiful little girl, who will always be forever young.
She knew she was loved. I mean, we told her that every day. Somebody asked me once, what would you say to JonBenet if you could? I would tell her, I'm sorry, I didn't protect you. You know, I had JonBenet bless my life for 6 years. And she really was a blessing.
The Boulder DA tells 2020 that the office is continuing to work with federal, state, and local agencies to make progress on this tragic case.
And David, Lou Smith's family says they're determined to continue making their way through that list. We're going to stay on this story. That's our program for tonight. I'm Deborah Roberts.
And I'm David Muir. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night.